When I first learned how to weave, my gram had me do a small basket, about maybe a little bigger than this, but I think for beginners this is a good size to start with. And one of the first decorative techniques that she taught me was this twined overlay. So on this basket, I used the twined overlay to add some decoration to it. You can see here in this basket that was made by my grandmother, Violet Booth, she used the twine overlay, that's the red part, to frame the plaited overlay. I think this is canary grass. She chose to use, I guess, what do you call it, synthetic raffia, because this is, I think, what was available. And I think in some of the other baskets that we've looked at during this project, they've used twined overlay to frame some of the more detailed designs. It's I think, a very easy technique for a beginner to use, and we'll go ahead and demonstrate how to use that. You see I've done a few twines up. Now I'm ready to add my decoration. I'm going to put the raffia over the non-working weaver, and I'm going to go ahead and continue weaving. And this is the basic twine. So with your working weaver, I fold it over, I pull the non-working weaver down, take the working weaver and make that go up and around the next liti. Adjust all my pieces, all my weavers, and then now the next stitch, next twine, I'm going to make the working weaver, pull it over, and you can see that I have to kind of adjust my raffia to cover my cedar. So just take the non-working weaver, pull it down, take the working weaver and pull it back and around the next liti. So now take your working weaver, fold that over, non-working weaver, fold that down, the working weaver, make that go around the next liti, and just kind of pull and adjust the weavers. Take your working weaver and fold that over, non-working weaver, pull that down, the working weaver, pull that up and around the next liti. So I continued the twined overlay all the way around, and I've almost made it to where I started. So let me do these last couple stitches. So now I'm back to where I started. I'm simply going to take the end of my decorative raffia, and I'm going to just pull that behind inside the basket, and then I'm going to continue doing the twining all the way around until I'm ready to add another element of decoration. I think the twining kind of just helps lock the raffia into place.
We're going to do the in-between weave, which is the pattern that you see here, and you can tell that there's a weft that goes along in a straight line, and then the basic twine above it. Our weaver now is going to be plaited between our warps, and what we've done here is we've narrowed the end a little bit at a nice gradual point, because we want it's going to be wrapping around our basket, so we want it to have a nice natural curve. We don't want it to come up too far too soon. She's reached the corner that she had started on. She's going to put it behind her next warp. And she has both of her previous weavers still on her basket. And she's just going to plait 4 or 5 times and then pause. So you can already tell she's got this beautiful plait here, and with her weavers, she's going to weave above those, just the same as she had before, her basic stitch. And this helps keep that plaiting in place. And she's just going to keep an eye on her pattern, making sure she's doing the over, under with that bottom weaver. And then her basic twine, compact twine, Z-twist, right on top. So she's going to do this weaving style about a ½ inch so that she can give herself room at the top to do a nice false embroidery design, and then still have enough warp left to finish her basket. An important thing to take note of while you're doing this weaving is you want to make sure you know how many warps you have, so you always want to keep track of your count. If you have an odd number, you're going to have this nice plaited checkerboard design all the way up your basket, like the inside of this, as you can see. And if you have a even number, you're going to have this really pretty design as well, where they go straight up because they match. So that's just something that you're going to consider doing this design. So if you have an even number and you want it to have that pleating, you can find a space like here and add one in to make it that odd number. I go through and I measure all the way around my basket, which I've done, to make sure that it's all the same height. It's been auled just like before to make my stitches nice and even. And now we're going to work on the ending. Because we're going around the basket and it's spiraling, we're going to try and end this so that the next twined row comes flush with the top of that last one. So you can see the tapering of this basket as it begins spiraling around with the in-between design, and I'm going to show how to taper this ending. Right here is where we're going to end the plaiting. So I'm going to catch up with my twining. I've come to my last stitch, and I just want to tug on this in-between that's doing the plaiting to make sure it's not puckering in the back. It's not doing that, so I can finish doing the basic stitch above it. We're going to tuck it behind this in-between weaver. We're going to fold it up like an L with that next warp, and it's going to become part of that warp. And that by doing this, it's going to hold it in place so it doesn't come out and unravel. And we're just going to weave around both of those to hold it in place with our basic stitch. And I'm going to take my awl and just make sure that it comes nice and even and flush with that row right below it at a nice even angle. And this tapering allows us to have this nice even row. right above that last compact weave. You can see right here is where it begins to taper as the weave goes around the basket, and it has this nice spiral effect all the way around, and it tapers right here and goes flush with that next row. And if you want, you can overlay some of your grass or maiden's hair fern to add to your design. I'm going to demonstrate an overlay that's plaited. So we're going to start a brand new row, and all I'm going to do is tuck it underneath this first warp. And then, just as before, I'm going to plait a few lines. I'm going to use my awl to just make sure it's down nice and tight against my weaving. And then over the top, we're going to start our basic twining. I'm just awling to make sure that it's holding it in place right against that last row we did. And we're going to do this all the way around the basket in one nice line. So I've come to the last part of the plaited overlay, and because we tapered up at the beginning, I'm going to tuck this strand into the back and just like the spiral, we're going to make our L shape. We're going to give it a nice tug, and it's going to become part of that warp. And I'm going to finish that twining those two together. I'm going to overlay the canary grass, this stitch. It's going to come over, following our pattern, and with a needle, I'm just going to very gently create a space, pulling on my warp just a little. And I'm going to needle the canary grass into this space. You can see our pattern has continued, and just to make sure that it's nice and secure, I'm going to do that one more time with this next warp. Again, I'm going to loosen it just a little. And you're just going to be careful that it doesn't twist. And we're just going to tug back on those warps so that they're not bulky. And once it's dry, this part can be cut so it's not overlapping the design.
So we do really focus on, as Tsimshians, Metlakatla Tsimshians, tight weave as you're going. You're just pulling all the time. We are pulling down, and it's basically awling, I guess, but what you accomplish with awling, you would do by that tension. You just pull that down, and then you're going to pull this one to the right, and that tightens it in the back, and then you're going to pull it again as you're coming down and doing that stitch. So that makes a very, very tight stitch. And then you're pulling it again once it's crossed, tightening that stitch. And then you just go around the next one, pull tight. This one comes down, tight, pull this again, down again tightly. And you just keep doing that all the way around the basket. It's easy to get these stitches right here. None of these were actually awl stitches. These were all just done by hand. And then as you come up here, the material in your design, you have to work at it to get it a little bit tighter there. So that's when you would then go back and either, one technique that we use here all the time is pulling. You're pulling the wefts up and you're pulling the stitch down. You can do the same thing with the awl. Just go in there and go between each one where you need to pack that down to make it straight.